Did you know that around 77 million Americans have debt in collections? That's nearly 1 in 3 adults, making debt validation letters a crucial tool for protecting your rights. Debt validation letters are a powerful tool that helps consumers challenge and verify debts, providing them with rights under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. This act is a federal law that limits the actions of debt collectors and gives consumers the power to dispute and validate debts. By using debt validation letters, consumers can ensure that debt collectors are not harassing them for debts that are not theirs or are no longer valid. Debt validation letters can also help consumers avoid falling into debt traps set by unscrupulous debt collectors. These collectors often use high-pressure tactics to get consumers to pay debts that are not valid or are past the statute of limitations. By demanding that debt collectors validate the debt, consumers can prevent them from using these tactics and protect their financial well-being. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act requires debt collectors to provide consumers with certain information about the debt, including the amount of the debt, the name of the creditor, and the date of the debt. When a debt collector contacts a consumer, they must provide this information in writing within 5 days of the initial contact. If the debt collector fails to provide this information, the consumer has the right to dispute the debt and demand validation. This is where the debt validation letter comes in. It's a formal request to the debt collector to provide proof that the debt is valid and belongs to the consumer. By sending a debt validation letter, consumers can assert their rights under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and protect themselves from harassment by debt collectors. Using debt validation letters can be a game changer for consumers who are struggling with debt. It's a powerful tool that can help them take control of their finances and avoid falling into debt traps. By understanding their rights under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and using debt validation letters, consumers can level the playing field and deal with debt collectors on their own terms. This can be especially helpful for consumers who are feeling overwhelmed by debt and are not sure where to turn. To get started with debt validation letters, you'll need a few basic materials. You'll need a template for the validation letter, which you can find online or create yourself using a word processing program. You'll also need a pen and paper to write the letter, and a stamp to mail it to the debt collector. It's also a good idea to have a copy of your credit report, which you can obtain for free from one of the 3 major credit reporting agencies. Having this information will help you keep track of your debts and ensure that you're sending the validation letter to the right person. Having prior knowledge about your rights as a debtor is also crucial. You should understand the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and how it applies to your situation. This will help you assert your rights and deal with debt collectors more effectively. You can find a lot of information online about debt validation letters and the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, so it's a good idea to do some research before getting started. This will help you feel more confident and empowered when dealing with debt collectors. You should also have a clear understanding of the debt in question, including the amount of the debt and the name of the creditor. This information will help you fill out the validation letter and ensure that you're sending it to the right person. You can find this information on your credit report or by contacting the debt collector directly. Having all the information you need will help you fill out the validation letter quickly and easily. When gathering materials, make sure to keep everything organized and in one place. This will help you stay on top of your debts and ensure that you're taking the right steps to validate them. You should also keep a record of all correspondence with the debt collector, including the date and time of any phone calls and the content of any letters or emails. This will help you track the progress of your validation request and ensure that you're not missing any important deadlines. To write and send a debt validation letter, you'll need to follow a clear and detailed process. First, you'll need to fill out the template with your information and the information about the debt. This includes your name and address, as well as the name and address of the debt collector. You'll also need to include the account number and the amount of the debt. This information will help the debt collector identify the debt and respond to your validation request. You'll also need to include a clear and concise request for validation, which should state that you're disputing the debt and demanding proof that it's valid. This request should be specific and to the point, and should include any relevant details about the debt. For example, you might mention the date of the debt or the original creditor. This will help the debt collector understand your request and respond accordingly. Once you've filled out the template, you'll need to sign and date the letter. This will help establish the authenticity of the letter and ensure that it's taken seriously by the debt collector. You should also keep a copy of the letter for your records, in case you need to refer to it later. This will help you track the progress of your validation request and ensure that you're not missing any important deadlines. When sending the letter, you should use certified mail with return receipt requested. This will provide proof that the letter was sent and received, and will help establish a paper trail in case you need to take further action. You should also keep the receipt from the post office, as this will serve as proof that the letter was sent. This will help you track the progress of your validation request and ensure that you're not missing any important deadlines. You should also be aware of the time frame for the debt collector to respond to your validation request. Under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, debt collectors have 30 days to respond to a validation request. If they fail to respond within this time frame, they may be in violation of the Act and could face penalties. You should keep track of the days and follow up with the debt collector if you don't receive a response within the time frame. In addition to sending the letter, you should also be prepared to negotiate with the debt collector if they respond to your validation request. This may involve discussing the amount of the debt or the terms of payment. You should have a clear understanding of your financial situation and be prepared to make a realistic offer. You should also be aware of your rights under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and be prepared to assert them if necessary. It's also important to be polite and professional when communicating with the debt collector. This will help to de-escalate the situation and increase the chances of a successful outcome. You should avoid being confrontational or aggressive, as this can create more problems than it solves. Instead, you should focus on finding a mutually beneficial solution that works for both you and the debt collector. When filling out the debt validation letter, there are a few key parts to focus on. The first is the request for verification, which should be clear and concise. You should state that you're disputing the debt and demanding proof that it's valid, and provide any relevant details about the debt. The second is the request for documentation, which should include any relevant records or paperwork that supports your claim. This may include receipts, canceled checks, or other financial documents. Another important part of the debt validation letter is the certification. This is a statement that the letter is being sent under penalty of perjury, and that the information contained in the letter is true and accurate. This is an important part of the letter, as it helps to establish the authenticity of the letter and ensures that the debt collector takes it seriously. You should be careful when filling out this section, as it can have serious consequences if you're found to have made false statements. You should also be aware of the importance of sending the debt validation letter via certified mail. This provides proof that the letter was sent and received, and helps to establish a paper trail in case you need to take further action. You should keep the receipt from the post office, as this will serve as proof that the letter was sent. This will help you track the progress of your validation request and ensure that you're not missing any important deadlines. When sending the debt validation letter, you should also be prepared for a response from the debt collector. This may include a letter or phone call, and may involve negotiations or discussions about the debt. You should be polite and professional, and avoid being confrontational or aggressive. Instead, you should focus on finding a mutually beneficial solution that works for both you and the debt collector. To visualize the process of filling out a debt validation letter, let's take a look at an example. The letter should include your name and address, as well as the name and address of the debt collector. You should also include the account number and the amount of the debt, as well as a clear and concise request for validation. This request should state that you're disputing the debt and demanding proof that it's valid, and provide any relevant details about the debt. The letter should also include a request for documentation, which should include any relevant records or paperwork that supports your claim. This may include receipts, canceled checks, or other financial documents. The certification is also an important part of the letter, as it helps to establish the authenticity of the letter and ensures that the debt collector takes it seriously. You should be careful when filling out this section, as it can have serious consequences if you're found to have made false statements.